I stood there in the sun-drenched living room of my beach house, the salty breeze drifting in through the open windows, carrying the faint crash of waves from the shore. It was supposed to be a simple family visit, nothing more. But then my daughter-in-law, Emily, turned to me with that bright, unyielding smile of hers, her hands planted firmly on her hips like she owned the place already. "We're staying here," she announced, her voice cutting through the quiet like a seagull's cry. "This house is perfect for us now. With the baby coming, we need the space, and you don't really use it much anymore, do you, Mom? It's time we made it our home." "Mom." She called me that so casually, as if we'd shared a lifetime of warmth instead of the polite distance we'd always kept. My son, Jack, stood beside her, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes avoiding mine. He didn't say a word, just nodded faintly, like this was all decided. Inside, my heart stuttered. Shock hit me first, a cold wave washing over me, making my fingers tighten around the edge of the kitchen counter. This house wasn't just walls and windows, it was my refuge, built with years of quiet savings after my husband passed. The memories here, the sunsets we watched together, the laughter of holidays long gone, they were mine. How could she claim it so boldly, as if it were a forgotten toy she could pick up? But I held back. No outburst, no sharp words. I've learned over the years that anger burns out fast, but restraint, that lingers, gives you time to think. I felt the hurt settle in, a quiet ache in my chest, like the slow pull of the tide eroding the sand. "Emily," I said softly, my voice steady even as my mind raced, "this place means a lot to me. Let's talk about it." Hello and welcome. Before we start, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. If these real stories speak to you, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. So enjoy the story. She laughed lightly, waving a hand as if swatting away a fly. "Oh, come on, it's just practical. You can visit anytime. We'll even redo the basement for storage or something, haven't been down there yet, but I'm sure it's fine." The basement. The word hung in the air between us, unspoken secrets stirring in my thoughts. I glanced toward the door at the end of the hall, its paint chipped from years of salt air. What she didn't know, what no one but me truly understood, was what lay hidden below. The old trunks, the faded letters, the truths buried in the dim light that could unravel everything she thought she knew about our family. I felt a flicker of something darker than hurt resolve, maybe, or the calm before a storm. "All right," I murmured, forcing a small smile. "Why don't we take a look down there together? You might change your mind." She paused, her confidence flickering just a touch, but she shrugged it off. "Sure, lead the way." As I turned the key in the lock, the creak of the door echoed like a warning, and I wondered if she'd still want to stay once she saw what was waiting in the shadows. The beach house had always been my anchor, a weathered two-story cottage perched on the dunes of Cape Cod, where the Atlantic whispered secrets to the shore. It wasn't grand, no marble counters or vaulted ceilings, just sturdy pine floors that creaked underfoot, whitewashed walls that caught the morning light, and windows framed with faded blue shutters that rattled in the wind. The front porch wrapped around like an old friend's arm, with wicker chairs where I'd sit for hours, watching the sea change from stormy gray to serene turquoise. Inside, the kitchen smelled of salt and fresh bread. The living room held a stone fireplace that crackled on cool evenings, and upstairs, the bedrooms overlooked the endless horizon. To me, it was more than a house, it was a piece of my heart, bought with the life insurance from my husband, Tom, after he passed 15 years ago. We dreamed of retiring here, away from the city's rush, but he never made it. So I did, pouring my grief into every nail and paint stroke, turning it into a sanctuary where I could breathe again. I'd come here every summer since, sometimes alone, sometimes with family trickling in for weekends. The house held the echoes of simpler times, barefoot walks on the sand, collecting shells that still lined the mantel, or lazy afternoons reading novels while the gulls cried overhead. It was where I found peace after long days teaching history at the local high school back in Boston. Retirement had let me spend more time here, tending the small garden out back where wild roses climbed the fence, or just sitting with a cup of tea, letting the waves wash away the world's noise. This place reminded me I could still stand, even when life tried to knock me down. My son, Jack, was the light that pulled me through those dark early years without Tom. He was 32 now, tall like his father, with the same easy smile and tousled brown hair that always looked windswept. As a boy, he'd run wild on this beach, building sandcastles that towered impossibly high before the tide claimed them. We'd spend evenings here, him curled up beside me on the porch swing, listening to stories of his dad's adventures. Tom had been a fisherman at heart, even if his job kept him in an office. Jack grew up cherishing those tales, and the house became our shared memory box. But life pulled him away. He moved to the city for college, then a job in marketing, where the pace was relentless. We stayed close, though phone calls every Sunday, visits when he could. He was thoughtful, always sending little gifts like seashell ornaments for my tree, reminding me he hadn't forgotten. Then there was Emily, his wife of 3 years. She was vibrant, with sharp green eyes and a laugh that filled a room like sunlight. They'd met at work. She was in sales, ambitious and quick-witted, the kind of woman who planned everything down to the minute. I liked her at first. Her energy was a nice contrast to Jack's quieter nature. She'd bring fancy coffees on visits, chat about books or recipes, and seemed genuinely interested in my stories. But over time, a subtle distance grew. She was city-born, preferring high-rises and bustling streets to the quiet isolation of the Cape. "It's charming," she'd say with a polite smile, but I could sense the unspoken, but hanging there like it was too rustic, too far from everything. Our relationship was cordial, surface-level warm, but I often felt like an outsider in their fast-paced world. Jack tried to bridge it, pulling me into conversations, but Emily had a way of steering things back to practical matters, like budgets or plans. Last summer, they'd visited for a week, and it felt almost like old times. Jack helped me fix a leaky faucet in the kitchen, his hands steady as he twisted the wrench. "Remember when Dad taught me this?" he said, grinning up from under the sink. I nodded, passing him a towel. "He'd be proud of how handy you've become." Emily watched from the doorway, sipping her iced tea. "We should update these fixtures sometime. Make it more modern." I smiled, letting it slide. "Maybe, but I like the character." That evening, we walked the beach together, the 3 of us. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. Jack skipped stones into the surf, just like he did as a kid. "This place never changes," he murmured, slipping an arm around Emily's waist. She leaned into him, her hair whipping in the breeze. "It's peaceful. But imagine what we could do with it, maybe add a deck or something." I trailed behind, my feet sinking into the cool sand, feeling a pang. The house wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was woven with our family's threadbare history. Tom and I had bought the land young, back when we were newlyweds with big dreams. We'd scraped together every penny, weekends driving up from Boston to hammer and paint ourselves. Jack was conceived here, during one of those blissful summers, and born into a world where this beach was his first playground. After Tom's heart attack, sudden, merciless, the house became my lifeline. I'd bring Jack here to heal, teaching him to fish off the pier, sharing picnics under the stars. "Your dad loved the stars," I'd tell him, pointing out constellations. Said they reminded him we're all connected. Those memories sustained me. Like the time Jack, at 10, buried a time capsule in the yard, a shoebox with drawings, a toy car, and a note to his future self. We dug it up years later, laughing at his childish scrawl. Or holidays, when the house filled with the scent of roasted turkey and pine from the tree we'd cut ourselves. Even after Jack left for college, I'd come alone, walking the shore and feeling Tom's presence in the wind. It was where I grieved, where I rebuilt. Giving it up? It wasn't just losing a home. It was severing that last tangible link to the life we'd all shared. Now, with Emily's pregnancy announced a few months back, things shifted. They called more, talking about nurseries and space. "The apartment's getting cramped," Jack said on our last call. "But we're figuring it out." I offered what I could, knitted blankets, advice from my own motherhood days. But deep down, I sensed change coming, like a distant storm cloud over the ocean. When they arrived this time, unannounced on a Friday afternoon, bags in hand, I welcomed them with hugs and fresh lemonade on the porch. Jack looked tired, lines around his eyes from work stress. Emily glowed, her hand resting on her slight bump. "Surprise visit," Jack said, kissing my cheek. "We needed a break." Emily nodded, glancing around. "Yeah, the drive was worth it. This air is amazing." We settled in, chatting about trivial things, the weather, her cravings for saltwater taffy. But as the afternoon wore on, I noticed their whispers, the way Emily's eyes lingered on the rooms, measuring them. Dinner was simple: grilled fish from the market, salad from the garden. We ate on the porch, the sunset casting a golden hue. "How's the baby doing?" I asked, passing the bread. "Kicking like crazy," Emily replied with a soft laugh. "Doctor says everything's on track." Jack reached for her hand. "We're excited." "But Mom, we've been thinking." He trailed off, and I felt that familiar quiet hurt stir again. The house hummed around us, alive with its history, unaware of the claim about to be staked. She looked up, bright-eyed. "Oh, hi. I'm just getting some measurements. The light in here is amazing, but this layout, we could open it up so much. Knock out that wall, maybe add an island." I paused, mug halfway to my lips. "That wall's load-bearing," I said gently. "Tom and I checked when we redid the kitchen." She waved a hand, already tapping notes into her phone. "Oh, contractors can work around that. It'll be fine." Jack shuffled in then, hair tousled from sleep, murmuring a good morning as he poured coffee. He didn't comment on the wall, just sat at the table and scrolled his phone. I joined him, offering toast and the jam I'd made from beach plums last fall. Emily declined the jam, watching sugar now for the baby, and pulled out her own granola from their bag instead. Over the next days, the little shifts added up, like grains of sand building a dune. Emily rearranged the throw pillows on the couch, declaring the old ones a bit faded. She moved my seashell collection from the mantel to a lower shelf, saying it would be safer with a toddler around someday. Each time, she'd say it casually, with a smile, just freshening things up while we're here, but I felt the space adjusting around her vision, not mine. One afternoon, I came in from the garden with a basket of herbs, planning to make pesto for dinner. Emily was at the table, laptop open, browsing paint swatches. "Soft grays for the walls," she said without looking up. "This beige is sweet, but it dates the place." I set the basket down, wiping my hands on a towel. "I like the warmth of it. Reminds me of the sand at sunset." She glanced up, tilting her head. "Sure, but for resale, or, well, for us, it needs updating. Babies need bright, modern spaces." Jack was out on the porch then, taking a work call, his voice low through the open door. He didn't hear, or chose not to. That evening on the porch lingered in the air like the fading light, the conversation hanging unfinished as Jack trailed off. Emily picked up where he left, her voice light but firm, circling back to the house as if it were already settled. "It really is the perfect spot for us," she said, setting her plate aside and leaning forward, elbows on the table. "Close enough to the city for Jack's commute once he adjusts his schedule, but far enough for the baby to grow up with all this fresh air. We could be here full-time by summer." I nodded slowly, folding my napkin in my lap, feeling the woven wicker of the chair press into my back. "It's a big change," I murmured. "Lots to consider." Jack glanced at me, then down at his hands. "Yeah, Mom. We've been talking about it a lot." Emily smiled, reaching over to squeeze his knee. "Exactly. And honestly, it makes sense. You've got your apartment in Boston, and this place sits empty most of the year. It's practical." Practical. The word settled over me like a thin blanket, useful, but not warm. I excused myself to clear the dishes, the screen door creaking softly behind me as I stepped into the kitchen. Through the window, I watched them lean closer, her hand gesturing toward the yard, his head nodding along. The hurt was quiet, a slow seep rather than a flood, but it was there. The next morning, I woke early, as I always did here, to the sound of gulls and the soft hush of waves. I padded downstairs in my robe, starting the coffee the way Tom used to, strong, with a pinch of salt to cut the bitterness. The ritual grounded me. But when I turned from the stove, Emily was already in the living room, standing in the middle of the rug with her phone out, taking photos. "Morning," I said softly, pouring a mug for myself. That evening, we walked the beach again. I trailed a step behind, watching Emily point out spots in the dunes. "A play area here," she said to Jack. "Maybe a little fence. And the porch could use new furniture. Those chairs are charming, but the cushions are worn." Jack nodded. "Yeah, could be nice." I bent to pick up a smooth stone, cool in my palm, and slipped it into my pocket. The comments weren't cruel, not sharp, just steady, like the tide wearing down a cliff. Each one nudged me further to the edge of my own home, making me feel like a visitor in the place I'd tended for years. Later, as I washed dishes, Emily came in to refill her water. She paused, looking around the kitchen. "We should replace these cabinets eventually." White shaker style would open it up. I dried a plate slowly, my reflection faint in the window over the sink. "They're original," I said. "Tom built them himself." She gave a small laugh, not unkind, but dismissive. "I know, it's nostalgic. But practically." Jack passed through then, heading upstairs. He caught my eye for a moment, offered a tired smile, but said nothing. He'd always hated tension, smoothing it over with silence or a quick change of subject. I understood, it was easier, but the quiet left me carrying it alone. By the end of the week, the air felt thicker, the house no longer breathing with me but around their plans. Emily spoke of "when we move in," not if, listing schools and commute times as if the decision were made. I listened, nodding, offering tea or walks, keeping my voice steady even as the ache grew, a quiet erosion of the life I'd built here. That morning, as she stood in the living room again, hands on hips, declaring it was time to make the place truly theirs, something stilled inside me. The hurt had built long enough, layer by layer, and I felt the shift, not anger, just a calm resolve rising through the ache. My gaze drifted to the hallway, to the basement door at the end, its old brass knob catching the light. I felt the words catch in my throat for a moment, but then the calm settled deeper, like the tide pulling back before it returns. "Come with me," I said quietly, rising from the chair. My voice was steady, almost gentle. "There's something I'd like you both to see." Emily's brow lifted, a flicker of curiosity mixing with her usual confidence. Jack hesitated, but followed as I walked to the hallway. The basement door waited there, painted the same soft blue as the shutters, its knob cool under my fingers. I hadn't opened it in months, not since I'd added the last folder. The key turned with a familiar click and the door side open, releasing the faint scent of cedar and old paper. We descended the narrow stairs single file, the wood creaking softly beneath our steps. The light switch at the bottom bathed the room in a warm glow from the single bulb overhead. It wasn't the damp, forgotten place Emily had imagined for storage. The space was orderly, almost reverent, shelves along the walls, trunks and boxes neatly labeled in my careful handwriting. I didn't rush. I wanted them to feel the weight of it. First, I opened the nearest trunk. Inside lay stacks of photographs, edges curled with age. I lifted one, Tom and me, younger, standing on the empty lot with shovels in hand, the ocean behind us. Another of Jack as a toddler, chasing waves with a plastic bucket. "These are the years we built this life," I said softly. Every board, every nail, Tom's hands, my planning. We poured everything into it. Emily leaned in slightly, her expression softening for a moment. Jack stood quiet, eyes on the photos. I moved to the next shelf, pulling down a wooden box filled with Tom's letters, dozens of them, tied with twine. I unfolded one, reading a line aloud. "This house will always be your sanctuary, my love. Promise me you'll keep it close when I'm gone." My voice didn't waver. He wrote that the week before the heart attack. He knew how much it meant to me. Then I turned to the fireproof cabinet in the corner. The key for it hung on a separate chain around my neck. I slipped it free and opened the door. Inside were folders, meticulously organized. I pulled the first, the original deed, my name alone on the title after Tom passed. "Paid in full," I said, handing it to Jack. Every penny after he was gone came from me, night shifts at the hospital, tutoring on weekends, no trips, no new clothes. I sold my mother's rings to cover the last payment. Next folder, bank statements, transfers highlighted in yellow. Your college loans, Jack. The wedding venue deposit. The down payment on your apartment that you thought came from a bonus. I looked at Emily then. $23,000, quietly sent so you could start your life together without worry. The last document I laid on the small table, my updated trust, drawn up 6 months ago. The house placed in a revocable living trust, mine for as long as I live, then directly to any grandchildren, held until they're 30. No provision for sale. No automatic transfer to Jack or Emily. The attorney's seal still crisp. Emily's hand rose to her mouth. Her eyes moved slowly over the papers, then to the photos, then to me. The confidence was gone. Color drained from her face, leaving only wide, stunned silence. She didn't speak. She couldn't. The realization settled over her like dust finally coming to rest. Every assumption about inheritance, about practical claims, about what was owed unraveled in the quiet light of what this house had truly cost. Jack lowered his head, eyes glistening. I closed the cabinet gently, the click echoing in the stillness. No one said a word. The silence stretched long after I closed the cabinet, the bulb's soft hum the only sound in the basement. Emily stood frozen, her hand still near her mouth, eyes glistening as they traced the edges of the documents on the table. Jack shifted beside her, his shoulders slumped, one hand rubbing the back of his neck like he used to when he was a boy facing a hard truth. I didn't push. I simply waited, letting the weight of those papers, of all those years, settle over them as it had over me so many times. Finally, Jack spoke, his voice low and thick. Mom, I didn't realize. All of it. The loans, the wedding, everything. I nodded, folding my hands in front of me. You weren't meant to. I wanted you to build your life without carrying that burden. Emily lowered her hand slowly, her face pale in the dim light. She looked at the photos again, then at me, something raw flickering in her eyes, regret, perhaps, or the quiet sting of seeing her assumptions laid bare. We thought. She trailed off, swallowing hard. No defense, no quick recovery. Just that silence returning, heavier now. We climbed the stairs without hurry, the creak of each step marking the shift. Upstairs, the afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the living room. I made tea chamomile, soothing, and we sat at the kitchen table, mugs steaming between us. No one rushed to fill the quiet. Emily wrapped her hands around her cup, staring into it. I've been pushy, she said at last, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Making plans like the house was already ours. I didn't see how much it holds for you. Jack reached over, covering her hand with his. We got caught up in the excitement. The baby needing space. But we didn't ask. We just assumed. I sipped my tea, feeling the warmth spread through me, steadying the ache that had built over the days. This house isn't just a building, I said gently. It's where I learned to stand again after your father was gone. It's my peace, my boundaries. I love you both more than you know, and there's always room for visits, for holidays, for the grandchild to chase waves here. But it's mine to keep for as long as I need it. They nodded, the entitlement fading like mist in the sunlight. Jack's eyes met mine, holding a new respect, tinged with quiet sorrow for the silence he'd kept. Emily blinked back tears, her usual brightness dimmed into something more genuine. I'm sorry, she whispered. Truly. I reached across, touching her arm lightly. We're family. We learn, we adjust. That's what matters. The rest of the afternoon passed in quieter rhythms, Jack helping me tend the garden without suggestion, Emily sitting on the porch with a book, glancing out at the sea as if seeing it anew. The air felt clearer, boundaries gently redrawn not with walls, but with understanding. I felt my dignity intact, my self-respect quiet but firm, like the dunes holding back the tide. There was healing in the hush, a fragile bridge rebuilding. But the days ahead would show how deeply it took root. That evening, after the tea had cooled and the sun dipped low over the water, Jack and Emily packed their bags quietly. No rushed departures, no lingering awkwardness, just soft goodbyes on the porch, hugs that held a little longer. We'll call soon, Jack said, his voice steady now. Emily nodded, her eyes meeting mine with a new gentleness. Thank you for everything. They drove away as the stars began to prick the sky, taillights fading down the sandy road. In the days that followed, the house settled back into its familiar rhythm. The creak of floors, the whisper of waves, the quiet I'd always cherished. But something had shifted inside me too. This experience, painful as it was in its slow build, taught me depths about family I hadn't fully grasped before. We love fiercely, sometimes blindly, assuming closeness means entitlement. Yet true respect blooms when we honor each other's stories, the unseen sacrifices woven into our lives. Emily's pushiness, Jack's silence, they weren't malice, just the haze of excitement clouding clearer sight. And my own quiet holding back? It reminded me that silence has its place, a gentle container for hurt, but there comes a moment to speak, calmly, from the heart. I've learned that boundaries aren't walls to keep love out, they're the frame that lets it grow straight and strong. Family isn't about claiming space, it's about sharing it with care, asking before assuming, listening before planning. There's a gentle lesson in that. Speak your truth when it matters, not in anger, but in the steady light of what you've built and why it endures. Months later, they visited again, this time with questions instead of declarations. Emily admired the cabinets without suggesting changes. Jack helped repair the porch swing, reminiscing about his dad. And when the baby arrived, a girl with Jack's eyes, they brought her here for her first taste of the sea. I held her on the dunes, feeling the circle widen, not break. Life flows like the tide, pulling and returning. This house remains my sanctuary, but now it holds room for their footsteps too. In the end, we're all just learning to stand together, with respect as our quiet strength. And that feels like enough like home. Thank you for watching and being part of this story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories. Your support helps this channel grow and reach more hearts. Thank you and see you again soon.